Hello, this is level 2 of my Strange Encounter tutorial. In level 1, we created this scene, and in this level 2 video, we are going to animate it into a perfect loop. So you can either go do that level 1 video, or you can just start from that completed scene by downloading the project files for free on my website. So either way, let's get started. Alright, so we want to go ahead and animate this thing. So I'm going to hold Shift, hit A, go to empty, click plane axes, and hit S to scale and bring that up. And so this light should already be parented to the rock, but I'm going to right click on the rock, and you know what, let's hit Z solid real quick, and let's shift left click and get the empty. I'm going to hold control, hit P, and click on object keep transforms. So again, that's just so that if I click on the empty and I hit G, I am moving them all together. So I'm gonna hit escape on that, and hit Z and go to rendered. And let's just start playing around with the position of this object. So let's hit N to bring up our right panel. I'm gonna click on item to make sure I'm in this item section, and we're at the first keyframe, or first frame. So I'm gonna hit G. I'm just gonna move this thing over. And so you can see the location has changed, and I'm also just going to play with these different rotation values just to give some more interest to our object as it's moving. Maybe hit G and bring it over a bit further. And with my mouse hovering over the location, I'm going to hit I. That's going to make a keyframe, and over the rotation, I'm going to hit I. And so we don't need this thing flying around quickly. I want it to be subtle and slow and smooth. So I'm gonna go about halfway. Actually, let's just go exactly halfway. I'm gonna type in here 125, hit enter, and we're directly halfway. I'm gonna hit G. I'm gonna bring it back over to here, and I'm gonna play with the rotation, turn it back towards the camera, maybe rotate it back the other way a bit. Let me hit G and move it even further. Play with this rotation too, and hit I, and make sure I hit I on the location also. So I can click here to jump back, and I hit spacebar, and I can get a preview of what this is looking like. So I think something like that was pretty good. With my mouse over the very bottom, I'm gonna hold Alt, hit A to deselect everything. I'm gonna left click on that first keyframe, hold Shift, hit D, bring it all the way to frame 250 and left click. So now I know the beginning and the end are exactly the same. So if I go back and I hit the first keyframe, or I go to the beginning, hit spacebar, you can see our object's flying over, and it's flying back, and it's ending up in the exact same spot, and that's what's going to allow us to loop this easily. I'm going to hit spacebar. I'm also going to bring my mouse at the very bottom, hit A, and I'm just going to right click, and let's go to interpolation mode, and I'm going to do Bezier. And I can't remember if that's the default or not, but I just want to make sure it's smooth between our points, and that's why I did that. But that actually may be the default handle, but that's going to work for us. And if you've never looped anything before, having your first and last keyframes exactly the same, and your position of your camera is what you need to do. But also, I'm going to change the ending to 249, because when the animation plays itself again, frame 1 will actually be here. So we just need to take one frame off to actually have it loop properly. So I'm going to take this a little bit further even. I'm going to left click on the camera here, and I'm just going to click here to make sure I jump back to the first frame. And I'm going to animate the rotation and the zoom. So I'm going to click on the camera here, and I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to change this to maybe 55. I'm going to hit I. I may not actually animate the focal length, but still, just in case, I'm going to hit I. And then we're going to change the rotation, but not the location. So I'm going to rotate this around. So I've got this one center. I'm also going to just add a little tilt, just changing, adding some dynamic interest to the scene. I'm going to hit spacebar and let this play through. So, okay, we know actually I'm going to go ahead in here. I'm going to go 120. Did I do 125? Let's go to the halfway point. And I just want to make sure that this is in a nice visually interesting spot. Maybe I'll take the shake down the other way, pull back up. Let's maybe try out, animating the focal length a little bit. If you take it too far, it doesn't look great, but let me do that. I'm gonna hit I to lock that in, and make sure I hit I to lock in my rotation. And let's see. So I'm gonna left click down here. So I need to left click on this keyframe, hit Shift D, and like we did before, I'm gonna bring this to frame 250, which is actually 1 over. And that's just to make sure, let's just make sure it's right. Okay, we're in the exact same position there, jump, and you can see if I jump between the beginning and the end, everything looks exactly the same, and that's exactly what we want. I'm gonna hit spacebar to kind of preview this. So our object's moving, our camera. Actually, let's see, I'm gonna hit spacebar. Does the camera actually animate? So it goes there. Oh, and it does go back. Okay, so it did get all the keyframes. So let's just hit spacebar. I'm just gonna preview this, see how I think it looks. Kind of goes over, kind of goes back. I think that's pretty good, and we can definitely see it's looping. Let's just see what happens if I go to this middle keyframe. What if I what if I really pull in here? I'm gonna hit I, so we just got a couple millimeters closer on the focal length. And this time I'm just gonna click and drag the scrub through, kind of go in. Oops. Something went wrong there. Let's see, spacebar. Did I mess something up here? Let's see. Oh no, okay, that's right. And it goes back. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Spacebar. Okay, I think it's a little boring that none of the other ones are moving, so we can just be subtle with this. We don't need to do too much. I just want it to be, they're not perfectly, not all of them are perfectly still. So I'm gonna jump back to the first keyframe by clicking there, and I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. Let me left click on this rock, and the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna lock in both the location and the rotation by hitting I over both of those. I'm gonna jump to the last frame and hit I again. And I just want to make sure, again, we need everything to be in the exact same position, the first and the last frame. And actually, you know what? Since I changed this to 249, we need to change this to 250, hit enter. I'm gonna hold Alt, hit A to deselect those. Left click on this one keyframe, hit G and move it over. And just while we're still working, I don't want to make that mistake again, where we do need to go all the way back to 250. So I'm gonna change in here, I'm gonna jump to 125, hit enter, and let's maybe make this composition a little better by moving this to the right. So I'm gonna hit G and just bring this over maybe to about here. And we also could play with the rotation a bit. This one could rotate too, maybe something like this. Hit I, don't forget to hit I over both of those. And if I hit to go back on the first keyframe, hit spacebar, you can see that now it's not just that main one moving, it's also this other one moving too, but they do go back into the exact same starting positions. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that for a few more of these. So I'm gonna jump back to the first frame, and I'm gonna go ahead and save real quick. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just keep doing this from some of the other ones. So I'm gonna go more quickly now. So adding my keyframes, jumping to the end, and it's still 250. Lock in that keyframe. I'm gonna jump to the halfway point, 125. I'm gonna hit G, move this over, maybe add some rotations of its own. Oops, I'm gonna escape on that. Make sure I hit I over both of these. And yep, that's good. So those are kind of moving in and out. Go back to the first frame. Go ahead and do this for at least a couple more of these. Lock in the location and rotation. Jump to the end. Lock in that. Go to the middle. And let's see, I'm going to hit G. Move it kind of over here maybe. I want this one to really turn back in so it's facing the camera more. Rotate it around a bit. I to lock both those in, and let's at least do it for one more. Let's do it for this one, beginning, end, locking in those keyframes, going to the middle, and let's hit G. This one's gonna move about to here, and again I want this to rotate a lot to really frame in the camera, the composition. Don't forget to hit I on those keyframes. All right, so let's jump back to the beginning. I'm gonna hit A to deselect everything, and hit spacebar, and just kind of get a sense for how this looks. So I think that's kind of interesting. It is definitely a little eerie having these move in and out with you. Maybe one thing I'll do, actually no, I think this is pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it before I start messing around with things too much. So we're definitely to a point where we can render this out and see if we're happy with it. Okay, so let's go. I'm going to go to the little printer icon, and I'm going to change this from a temp folder. I'm going to go into my project folder, go to renders. I'm going to make a new folder called animation 01. I'll click in there, name it animation, hit enter, and hit enter again. So now I have where it's going to go. I forgot to change this back to 249, so we need to change this back to 249 so it loops properly. And yeah, at this point you can just click render animation. But I do want to take it a little bit further and do a little bit of compositing. So let's click at the top. I'm going to click on compositing, and then I'm going to left click and drag. Oops, I can't left click and drag there. If I do it from over here, I can make myself a new window. I'm going to change this to a image editor, and click on this little icon, and let's click on rendered result. So we're not seeing anything, but let's jump back. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go to like the middle. I'm gonna go to like 120 where we're at the middle. And if I hit F12, or if you just go to view render image, it'll render your image. And if I close that, you can now see our rendered image is showing up now that we actually have something for it to view. So in the right panel, I'm going to click on Use Nodes. Okay, so first I'm going to left click off because they both were selected. I'm going to left click on this one, hit G, move it over to give myself some more space. I'm also going to hit N to close that right panel. We don't need it. I'm going to hold Shift, hit A, and I'm going to go to Color and click on, let's see, I want RGB curves. And if you hover over that line and left click, it'll connect those up. So if you aren't familiar with using curves, you can alter your lights to darks. You can alter how light or dark they actually are by moving around this curve. If you've never seen it before, it can be a bit confusing, and if you go too far, you can kind of actually mess up your scene. So, but you can always delete this node out if you screw things up. But first, I'm going to bring my view over a bit and zoom in. I want to be able to see a decent amount of this, and then I'm shift middle mouse clicking to pan around. And then I'm going to go back into my second view here, and I'm just going to start playing with the position of these. So if I just left click on this line, it's going to add a little dot to it. And if I left click again, it's going to add another. And I just want to have some variation. I just want to alter. You see, if I bring this up, it's making those areas brighter. If I bring them down, it's making it darker. So I want some of this to go up, but that's too bright. Maybe just about to like there. And this other dot, I'm going to bring over a bit, kind of like so. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to see what it looks if I go lower. So really, so we're clipping here, which means these really bright areas here are getting clipped out, and that's why we're getting that weird effect. Let's go ahead and bring that back down. And then with your mouse, with that selected and your mouse on this right side, you can hit M to turn it off and turn it back on. So you can see we are getting a bit of a change. Those brights are even brighter. But I kind of wanted to turn it off and on. If I zoom out a little bit and I'll put my mouse back over here, M and M, I kind of wanted to brighten the overall scene a little bit. So let's see if I move this other to the left a little bit. So you don't want to go too far to the left, but a bit. And then maybe I'll bring this back down a bit. Maybe it's too overall bright. I'm gonna hit M to turn it off and back on. And so yeah, it's just, you know, at this point, it's just getting into editing. I did make it like way brighter with this edit. If I turn it off and on, maybe you think that's taking a little bit away from the scene. We could bring this back down a bit, hit off and on. But I did want to brighten it up a bit. So maybe, let's see what happens. Maybe something like that. Turn it off and on. I'm gonna zoom back in, see how I feel about it zoomed close up, turning it off and on. Zoom back out. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I think I wanted the scene brighter. I wanted you to be able to see the features on this object a little bit better. So I think that's pretty good. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some film grain. So you're going to have to download this separately because I don't own this film grain. It's completely free, but just follow the link in the description to find it. And so once you have, I'm going to go ahead and go to File, Append, navigate to wherever you downloaded that file. So I have it here. This is the download you get once you unzip it. Double click on that, double click on film grain, double click on node tree, and double click on film grain. So now we can hold shift, hit A, click on the search and type in film, click on this film grain and put this down here. So I'm going to left click on the composite, G to move it over. I'm going to hold shift, hit A, click on search, and I'm going to type in mix, hit enter, hover over this line and click here. And then I'm just going to left click and drag this film grain onto this mix shader. So if I zoom in over here, you can see this is what this film grain looks like. We're going to change this mix, so click on the mix and change it to overlay. And as you can see, it's still really intense and we don't want it this intense. So you can change this factor value. I'm going to go to 0.4. And you can really see here, like in the shadows, we're really getting this nice little grain. And that's just making things look a little less like digitally and fake and a little bit more realistic. You also can play with some of these other blend modes. I think I'm pretty happy with how overlay works. And if you want it more subtle, you can go to 0.2. And it's a little more subtle. You could go, let's see, like 0.6. I think that actually still even looks pretty good. It's like a grainy camera. But I'm gonna go back. I think I like 0.4. I'm gonna hit enter, zoom back out, and also with your mouse over here, if you click on this one, you should be able to hit M to turn it off and on. And yeah, you can see it's a subtle difference, but it does really help make it look a little less fake. I may even go actually back up to like 0.5. I think I like the graininess. So definitely good. So now at this point, you just click render animation and we're all done. Well, that's it. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope that you learned something. If you did, definitely check out my website and my YouTube channel. I have a lot of other tutorials that are a lot of fun. And if you can support the channel in some way, I definitely appreciate that too. All right, have a good day.